So when I think about when I'm at my best as a coach, it's not my intelligence, that's for sure. It's not my skill, it's my mindset. When I'm at my best, I show up and I'm present for the leader or athlete that I'm supporting. I'm curious and I'm intentional. Now, today's episode is a conversation about the importance of that, how we show up. And I'm having this conversation with one of the top executive coaches in the world for decades, Marcia Reynolds. And her background isn't sport, it's coaching people. And she is going to help us become a better leader and help us to become better coaches with her decades of experience in leadership and executive coaching. And I would also share this. You're really going to want to hang around for the end of this episode because she is going to share a hugely powerful framework for having hard conversations. In fact, I used it right away after this call and had that hard conversation I needed to have. And I have to say, it went pretty darn well. So thanks to Dr. Marcia. Dr. Marcia is a master certified coach and the president of Co-Visioning, a master of teaching others how to engage in powerful conversations that connect, influence, and activate change, even when emotions are strong. She's worked with so many different groups, from government agencies and large multinational companies to coaching schools in Europe, Asia, and the Middle East, and all across North America. She's been hired by organizations around the globe, not just because of her highly engaging presentations, but because of her ability to inspire people to change minds and behavior. You are listening to the Coaching Culture Podcast. It is ad-free because it is supported by TOC, which develops coaches, athletes, and administrators through our online courses, our online coaching, live trainings, and our community. To learn more about TOC Coach and TOC Athlete, go to tocculture.com. Marcia, it's great to have you here and this conversation. I'm really looking forward to every time we've talked with someone that is an expert in the executive coaching space. It's always been a big hit with our listeners because we just value so much the skills, the tools, the mindset that leads to like really great conversations. And so I actually just want to start with a little bit of a question just about yourself and just what drew you to executive coaching. I think a lot of people might be passionate about leadership, but this executive coaching space, the interest and the passion maybe is a little different.
Yeah. Well, it was actually in the 1980s, I was kind of thrown into this training department. My first master's was broadcasting, and I was hired to push TV sets around a hospital. But it was for the training department. And she quickly started assigning me to do training, to do the leadership training and other training as well. And so it prompted me to get a second degree in adult learning. And that was when the gates opened. It's like, how do we learn and grow? What really makes the difference? From there, I went into teaching, running training departments for tech companies. And I continued to be very curious about what does it take for us to learn and grow, and tried to make my training classes better. And I'm especially dealing with, I would say, training resistant people in that whole tech world. And these were global companies. I made them more interactive. We played games, but there was always something missing. It seemed like they would get interested in trying out new behavior, but it didn't sustain if they felt awkward. And so it was the last day of my last job. Actually, somebody sent me this article on this new thing, coaching. It was 1995. And I said, I'm always interested in seeing something different, a different approach. And I watched a coaching demo and I said, there is something different here. And so I immediately signed up for a coaching school, which is, it was great timing, 95, when we were just bringing it out into the world. But it prompted me to continue to research and to understand what happens in the brain, and even inspired me to get my doctorate, to really look at the difference between what happens when we just give advice and it's just a cognitive process, but when we coach them and activate the creative part of the brain to really see possibilities, to go beyond the stories we tell about our situations themselves, that I knew right away this was a
Mhm.
different learning technology. See it as a learning technology. It's not a therapy. Um, and I've
Yeah.
been studying it and researching it because neuroscience is such a new science ever since, and we're just coming out with new things about how our presence impacts their presence and what opens people's minds. So I'm still, as you can see, passionately curious about the impact of coaching that we can have with people. So I continue to coach leaders around the world as well as
Mm.
teach coaching skills. I'm off to China next week and
Mm.
Italy and then Malaysia. And there's just coaching has just so expanded um, in
Mhm.
around the world, but also in all industries. And as you said, even in sports, that it's really
Yeah.
taken hold is the importance of the
Yeah.
conversations we have with
Yeah.
coaching. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to like unpack some of those things around what makes great conversations from your perspective and some of those skills. But
Mhm.
before you go into that, I actually want to go back to earlier part of what you shared there, which was you're really fat. You were really interested in learning and growth. And so you
Mhm.
started making your like, workshops and learning, as a teacher, more
Mhm.
interactive, more activities, and people were interested, but you were like, they weren't learning, growing, like they weren't actually able to sustain changes. And so much
Yeah.
of my experience is like when I started doing this work back in 2016, 2017, I had done all the activities, the leadership workshops with my team. You'd buy these things, you'd roll these things out,
Mhm.
and the fun activities, but yeah, people were interested, but it didn't lead to real
Change.
sustained change, growth. And
Mhm.
now I feel like I'm in a weird space because I go and observe coaches, and I
Mhm.
see even just when they're talking to their team, like a sports coach, it's very lecturing, dictating, and I go, ooh, like that's
Mhm.
are they learning anything? But I guess before we go jump into coaching, like my question for you
Mhm.
here is there still benefits like to the interactions, the activities,
Mhm.
those types of learning environments, or is coaching just like the superior? It's the way.
I think the hybrid, keep doing them both is the best way. Because obviously, I said I'm teaching all over the world, so I'm still telling people I'm the expert coach. You should do this. Um, but that we experience these things together, but then to coach them as they go out there and it starts to feel awkward and they want to go back to old behavior, to be there for them, to sustain it, whether it's group coaching. If I teach a class, I want to do group coaching with them for a while.
Mm,
Um, or if it's a team coaching, or the one-on-one. So that sustainable change is also sustainable over time. And that's
mhm,
one of the differences. And so, you know, um, as they say with habits, that even if you decide, wow, this is a new thing for me to do, there has to be repetition in order for it to embed. And so that coaching, I think, if I decided on my own, it's more likely I will commit to it. But even if you help me to experience something through interaction and through games and things, that I can still have insights. But you have to tease that out. You can't just play the game and do a little debrief. It's like, so what was it really that came up for you? What changed in your mind? How might that apply to seeing yourself differently? So there's still
mhm,
got to be coaching following the experience to embed the learning, and then uh, staying with them over time as they implement the learning. That's the best way to do it. Do both, but use coaching in your training. Don't just lecture them. you know, they,
yeah.
these days attention spans are, so you're kind of wasting your breath.
Yeah. Well, from a brain perspective, because you talked about the neuroscience, from a brain
Mhm.
perspective, why doesn't just telling people what they need to change and why they need to change, why doesn't that work?
Yeah, because you're only activating the cognitive brain. Now, understand we have three memory centers, which are required for learning, right? So, cognitive brain, what's the learning center? short-term memory.
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
know? And so what happens when we go to sleep at night is that the brain throws out most of what we heard during the day. It only maintains a little bit and to transfer into long-term memory, and only things that had an emotional reaction to it. So if you tell somebody something and they go,
Mm.
"Wow, I didn't realize that," and then they turn around and tell someone else, then possibly the brain might remember it.
Mm.
But if they're just sitting there and absorbing stuff, they're not going to remember most of what you say. And even that information doesn't necessarily change behavior. And we know that. I started off, I told you, in the hospital, in healthcare.
Mhm.
And there's so many studies that show that you can tell someone, if you don't do this, you will die, that they'll do it for a week and then they rationalize why they don't need to do it anymore,
Mhm.
and because it didn't really embed. So information doesn't change behavior. It's just, yeah, and especially if it doesn't uh, trigger any emotional response in me.
Mm.
It's different if you're just using the cognitive brain, and then we're just attaching it to what we already know. But when I work with the creative center of the brain, when I'm reflecting what they're saying, and so they listen to themselves and go, "Oh, I said that? I believe that?" And when they say things about themselves like, "Well, I'm just kind of new at this." Oh, that's how you're defining yourself. So,
Mhm.
in the picture of what you want to create, how would you redefine yourself? When I ask the questions, I reflect and ask the questions, it stimulates the middle brain, the long term memory, to start making new associations and connections. And that's when insights emerge. And again, because it's in the middle brain, is more likely than to embed, to remember. But we still, in coaching, have to say, "So what did you just learn?" And say it out loud, because the brain needs to hear it to embed it, and then how are you going to use that and get a commitment to action, to the goals.
Mhm.
So it's the full coaching process that makes the difference.
Yeah, and for our listeners, how would you
Yeah.
define the difference between, coaching and like what is not coaching, right? Like, I mean, there's obviously like what you've kind of alluded to here. It's like we're
Mhm.
not just sitting there telling people what to do and why they need to do it. But so
Yeah.
what makes a conversation for a coach with an athlete, for instance,
Yeah.
what makes that a coaching conversation as opposed to a lecture?
Yeah. Well, it's not just a lecture. I think the biggest mistake that people make is that they confuse mentoring with coaching.
Mm.
And I think especially in a sports situation, that I immediately think, "Oh, let me tell you my experience." And that's mentoring. It's like when somebody says, "I've gone through this," and we immediately think of our own stories and start to share our stories. Well, if you're dealing with someone who's never a brand new athlete that has no experience to draw from, well, they may need to hear some things because they don't know.
Mhm.
You can't coach nothing. But if they have some experiences, it's much better to say, "Okay, so what's been on your mind? How do you see this situation?"
Mhm.
And what is it that you'd like to create instead? What's getting in the way? Let's look at what's getting in the way. To stay focused on the person and how they see it instead of what I think, and so the problem is, as soon as I start sharing my story, I shift it to me, and I'm also shifting the dynamic, and in coaching, I'm your thinking partner. I'm not here as the expert. I may
Mhm.
be an expert and people see me that way, but I'm not here to act that way. I'm here to help you think. And so I'm
Mhm.
trying to maintain the power dynamic at a more equal level. As soon as I jump into my story and start telling you what I think is right, then all of a sudden I'm in the expert and you're just sitting there listening, and you're not as knowledgeable, you're not as important. You really mess it up, you know.
Mhm.
And so that, I just wanna hear what your perspective is so much better than let me tell you mine.
Yeah, yeah. It's so easy to fall into that mentorship role,
Mhm.
especially I think where we maybe really relate to something that they're struggling with, to the problem that they're struggling with. I think about it just
Mm,
even my son's team
right.
here, and we got a lot of elite coaches, but I'm going to give an example like on our
Mm,
nines football team here. and there's a boy on that team. He's got ADHD, and I have ADHD, and part of me just wants to go, well, let me tell you about like what I did, and I know like that's so hard, like, and
Mhm.
just mentor this young
Yeah.
person. But even in his limited experiences, just the benefit of actually asking questions and listening to
Yeah.
understand his experience and get him to reflect on his experience
Yeah.
is so powerful. One of the
Uh,
things that you shared in there, sorry, go ahead.
I just want to say that, and the significant piece of what you just shared is that that person, that child, feels seen, heard, and not broken. You
Mm,
know, that somebody might listen to me and make me okay.
mm,
That is so important, that there's not something wrong with me, that I see you, I hear you, I value what you think, because you
mm.
have a lot to share. The human soul needs that, and especially these days when we're so stuck to phones and computers, they need that safe space, to talk through what they're thinking about and the challenges they're facing. And that's what we need to provide more of than just jumping in and telling them what we think, which
I know.
shuts them down. Yeah.
Yeah, I know personally, like when people give me advice,
Hmm.
I do appreciate it. I do value it. Sometimes it also I get like in the back of my mind, I don't consciously, but I think it's more unconscious in the moment. But when I reflect on it, it's like what I don't like about it is like, yeah, but they're not. I get that they may have dealt with this, but they're not living my life. Like they don't know what's why like they don't.
Exactly.
Yeah, and so there is becomes that
That's the
resistance, or we
problem.
explain away. Yeah, yeah, they're
Hmm.
right. Probably should do this. I probably should not,
Hmm.
say yes to all these things. But
Yeah.
here I am, and this is my experience, right? Like, and it doesn't feel like
Yeah.
they hear that experience, does it?
No, and that's the worst assumption a coach can make, and I teach this all the time, is to immediately assume you understand what they're going through. You have not lived their life. You have not, you don't see it. You can't stand in someone's shoes. That's not possible. And so
Mm,
to start by not even trying to understand what they want, but I always tell coaches, coach slowly. Try to see what they see through their eyes. Don't assume you know. Ask, what do you mean by, um, it doesn't seem right in this moment? Tell me more about that.
mhm,
And to really uh, see from their perspective before you even get to, so what do you think it could be differently that we can work toward?
mhm,
Coaches, even trained coaches, coach too fast. Take
mm,
time to see what they see, and don't assume you've ever lived their experience, because you haven't. And I coached a group of women that all live in a small town next door to each other. And that was the hardest thing. I'm like, I don't care if you've known this person since you were a tiny baby. Don't
mm,
assume you see what they see. Take time.
mhm,
Because then again, they feel heard, like, wow, this person's really listening to me. And they
mhm.
understand my experience, and I'm important enough to be listened to. That's critical.
You talked about earlier about seeing the person, and your latest book, "Coach the Person, Not the Problem." You know that's a term I've heard a lot in coaching, and it's oftentimes I'm reflecting on, am I getting caught up in someone's problem instead of really seeing the person? Just why is that so value for a
Mhm.
coach? Let's say they're working with an athlete that just
Yeah,
refuses to show up on time or has
yeah,
really poor effort. Like, why is it so important for them to actually be focused on the person instead of the problem?
yeah. Um, in coaching, I always say you're their thinking partner, and that's the role I'm taking on. That, to sit down and say, help me to understand from your perspective, what's going on, and, why this is a continual pattern. I want to know. And to say that with real compassion and curiosity, not with what's going on with you.
Mhm,
you know, the presence we bring, that's genuine compassion and curiosity, is critical for them to open up.
mhm,
Um, that, you know, uh, if we still have this, that I'm going to be punished for my behavior, and again, this could be often a question I tell coaches, don't forget to ask, is this situational for this experience? Has just started happening, or is this a lifelong pattern? You know, I mean,
Mhm.
if they've been doing this because that's the way their family did it for years, it may be a little bit more difficult to shift, but to understand, just let them say what's going on without them feeling I'm going to be punished for what I
Mm.
do and something's wrong with me. You
Mhm.
know, to say, just help me understand from your perspective of why this is, continuing to happen. And is this important for you to shift? What's making it important? And let's explore together in your mind what's truly getting in the way, not what I
Mhm.
think. I want to know from your perspective. That engages them to talk about what's happening in their thinking. And so I'm really coaching them to think. I'm not like just focused on, uh, okay, here's what you need to do. What are your options?
Mhm.
What do you choose to focus on? Set your goal, and give me the date. I
Mhm.
mean, that's problem solving. And if that hasn't worked, then there's something else going on with this person. Let's see if we can find that together.
So for our listeners, the majority of them are not going to they're not coaches, executive coaches, they're not in that space, but they're sports coaches.
Right.
And they probably plan to remain that way. They just want to be better as listeners and better
Mhm.
at coaching rather than stepping into that mentorship role. So
Uh-huh.
if you had to give like three big pieces of advice for someone that's going to be a leader that wants to be
Mhm.
more of a coach than a mentor
Yeah.
to their athletes or to people in their life, what
Uh-huh.
would the three tips, the three things they need, the skills they need to work on, tools that they could use? Just, yeah, I
Yeah.
guess the three big things.
Okay. Um, Before you go into any conversation, there are three things that I often talk about. Number one is to be very clear on your intention.
Mm,
Are you going in there to fix them, to change their minds and make them do something different? Well, that's not a coaching intention. If
mhm,
you truly have to know, I'm going in to really hear what's on their mind and to understand what's important to them, what goals they want to set. I am here for you, not for me.
mhm,
But be honest about your intention,
mhm,
and I say this for parents too, as well in any situation. So number one, understand the intention and what intention do you want to set? That to say, this has been happening. I know that you really want to be a part of this, a respected part of this team. Would you be willing to share, to have a conversation with me so I can understand what's going on with you, that's getting in the way of you achieving your goal?
mhm,
Okay, I have to know what
mm,
their goal is. The second one is that emotional state, that am I going in with curiosity and care or frustration and anger? you
mm,
know? So set the emotions that I care about this person. I truly care. We have to care about our clients and the people we work with and the players and our children. I care.
mm,
um, and I'm curious. And I'm
mhm,
curious. I'm really open to hearing. So we have to really feel that. Not just it's not a cognitive process, it's a full body experience. I care from my heart and I am open. I open my mind and not know. I don't know. Please
mhm,
help me to understand. Um, and then the last one, it relates to that, is acceptance, accepting that uh, this person is going through whatever they're going through that's making this difficult. And I just want to hear where they are right now. And I'm not going to judge. It's accept with no judgment. I'm not going in with judgment. And judgment is also an emotion. And these are things we have to maintain throughout the conversation, maintain that intention, maintain that emotion, and to catch judgment. I know my judgment isn't like right here in my solar plexus. And I get this because
mhm,
I get to teach all over the world where people have different value systems than me. And they'll say something and I'll like, ooh, you
mm,
know, and I catch it, breathe into it, and choose to go back to that caring and curiosity. And so I
mhm,
always say, go practice. There's plenty of places in your daily life that are going to trigger your judgment, whether it's the airport, the grocery store, traffic, and sense where you feel it, what tightens up in your body, because you want to catch it before it invades your brain. There it
Mm.
is. Breathe into it and come back to choosing to be calm and curious, to be curious and care, whatever it is. But work on your judgment, because they're going to be saying things that in the conversation you don't like it. Yeah,
Mm.
but stay open to trying to understand what's behind the statements that they're sharing, and would they be willing? And that's a constant question. Would you be willing to look at other ways of dealing with this that's not working now? And
Yeah.
that's that willingness question. That comes back to the old sales techniques, getting to yes. Would you be willing? If
Mm.
they say yes, you can always go back, but you said you'd be willing to try something else, to see something else.
Yeah, I love that. I love that those three steps there, and I love that invitation that you're giving them when you and you're sharing that intention. It's not enough just to know our intention, but to share the intention, to offer
Yeah.
that invitation for the
Hmm.
conversation, to offer that invitation to, maybe choose differently, right? Like so empowering. So I love this. I'm a coach. I'm listening to this. I'm like, all right, I gotta practice this three steps here. I'm all on board. Now how do we actually, like, what's the work like look like there? Like, cause you around, you teach and you give people there, like, now what should my practice look like to develop to develop this curiosity, to develop this ability to
Yeah.
be aware of my, and shift, and state my intention.
Yeah. Um, it comes back to the um, days of when we were first learning emotional intelligence. So it starts with self-awareness, and so even when as soon as you wake up,
Mm,
because you get out of bed and stuff's on your mind and all this, to just choose today. This is who I'm going to be.
mm,
To bring that into my intention for the day. Um,
mm,
and then throughout the day, I always say, t- make an alarm on your phone to 2, 3 times a day, just to stop and say, what am I feeling and why? And what
mm,
do I choose to feel differently? And that actually starts to wire your brain to be more self-aware of how I'm feeling and what I'm choosing. And so if we do this on just throughout the day, and not just try to remember it when I'm going in to have a difficult conversation, then we start to develop an ability to catch the moment I get triggered and get angry, because something didn't work. you
mm,
know, okay, and there I go again. What is it I want to feel? Or do I want to stay angry? But make it a choice. Make it a
mm,
choice, because sometimes we need to use anger. Um, mm,
mm,
but make it your choice instead of your emotions choosing for you. So practice during the day. Start creating this as a new habit. It's not about eliminating old things, but to create new habits. And that takes repetition,
mhm.
So start today to do that. And you'll start creating the habit of self-awareness and choice.
No, I love that. And for me, journaling has been a huge thing for the last 10 years. I always wanted to do it, thought it'd be great. And many
Mhm.
days it does feel very dry, but I think it's just that daily repetition of like, okay, what am I thinking? What am I feeling?
Yeah.
And I love, that's a great invitation for coaches to do, is to just like develop that awareness, because without any awareness, we can't, like you said, we're not at choice, right?
Yeah, kind of what they say, clueless
Mm,
of why
yeah.
we're doing that. And we say that about people. We see people who have no self-awareness,
Mm,
you
mm,
know, and you
mm,
can see that they're just not even aware of the impact, not just what I'm doing, but the impact I'm having on people, So, once we can get centered, and this comes back to that, conversation that we had even before this about in any clutch situation, it's really important that you ground and get centered so you can make your choices of how to feel and how to act in that moment. Um, that once we get centered, we have that choice. But if we don't do that, we're just reacting all over the place, then uh, we see people, we judge people that do that, because
mm.
because of the impact that they're having. once I'm open to being grounded and centered, I can see what I'm doing to people around me. This is why it's important for coaches before they go into a coaching session.
Mm,
Ground myself, get centered, and choose how I want to feel, because then I'm more open to seeing you,
mhm. Yeah.
and not just hearing your words, but what's behind your words. What is it when you look away and you think, then I can be curious about, would you share what just happened there? That I can
Mhm.
hear when you throw out a statement. Like yesterday, I was uh, doing a demonstration, and in the middle of the conversation, she said, I need to be able to recognize, when I'm doing this, to navigate my emotions instead of being run by them. And then she
Mm,
went on to something else. I said, could we stop for a moment? That was really significant, what you just said. If I'm not fully present, I'm not going to catch those little things they throw out that are really
mhm,
important, that I need to stop and have them repeat so it embeds. So part of that, it's not just uh, to give them good emotions that I'm here for you, but to be open to hear what they're saying, that we need to reflect back to them so they think about their thinking. So as a
mhm,
coach, I cannot fully ingest what you're giving me if I'm not fully present. So
mhm,
it's a two-way thing. It's for me to give you my emotional state so you feel safe, and for me to hear what you give so I can catch what you need to hear, so you can put it into your own brain. Oh yeah, I said that. What does that mean to me? So I can
mm,
start
mm.
opening your mind to different possibilities.
Yeah, and I think when I look at, well, as a coach, there's so many days where I finish the practice, right? Your coaches will finish the practice, they'll finish the game. God,
Mhm.
why did I act like that? Or why I had the conversation. Oh
Right.
man,
Yeah.
and just the power of before you go into that conversation, the power before you go into that practice, that
Right.
game of just saying, hey,
Mhm.
how do I want to show up? And then, so often it is the
Mhm.
curious, it is and accepting, not holding on to that judgment, not holding on to that frustration,
Mhm.
just that ability to set that intention to
Mhm.
be that person that we want to be for others. So I
Yeah.
think it's a really, this is like really, really important work. I asked a group of coaches there in our online community the other day. So, what is the thing, one of the things you enjoy the most about just the act of coaching,
Mhm.
coaching sports, and
Mhm.
just like the majority, like I'd say 75+%, it wasn't practice planning. It wasn't, teaching skills. It was
Mhm.
conversations,
Yeah.
conversations with their
Mhm.
athletes, with their coaches, with
Mhm.
recruits, like all those types of things. Just, and like getting better at this is just, it's not just good for the other person. It's good for
Yeah.
ourselves, isn't it?
Oh, I love that. I found coaching. I'm growing with my clients every day. Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah. That being, especially with all the craziness in the world right now, just to stop and see people. The conversation requires, I really hear you. I see you, and when people feel seen, and I believe in you, and they
mhm,
feel like, wow, you might even believe in me more than I believe in myself. You see me, you believe in me. What can occur is amazing. And that's what I love about coaching, because when I see you and I believe in you, and when you start to open up and you have these insights that surprise me,
mm.
isn't that awesome that you can see them evolve right in front of you? That it's just, wow, it's such a great thing that we're actually, helping a human to expand who they are and how they see the world is so incredible. I'm so grateful for finding coaching every day.
Yeah. Yeah. What's been what is the biggest benefit for
Mhm,
the coach?
mhm,
And we talk about obviously the benefits for the person being coached, that athlete, right?
mhm,
Of us taking that
mhm,
type of posture with them.
mhm.
But like, how does it really benefit me other than just having a more impact?
Yeah. Well, learning to be present, we have to learn to be present in life. It's
Mhm.
not just, oh,
Yeah.
in this one moment, half hour, I'm going to be with you. But, I know when I get my day is going downhill. I live in Arizona in the desert. I'm pointing to a mountain right outside my house. I got a trail, head right. a block away. I get on my hiking boots and I go out into the desert, and you have to be present in the desert because there may be snakes, you know, and that I get to be present to life out there, so the practice of presence is also such an impact on my life experience, especially when things are uncomfortable and crazy and uncertain. So I love that I've been able to develop that and then to bring that into my coaching. And I just want to say that over the years of my coaching and what it is that I teach my coaches is, we make coaching way too hard. It's like, I have to do this. I have to do this. So even in advising and mentoring, it's like, I have to do this. When all I'm doing is relaxing into this conversation, as you said, it's the conversation. I'm just having a conversation with you. I'm listening to what you're saying. I'm going to offer back what I think you said that seems to be most important and see what you think about it. So I don't have to know anything other than the skills of being present, picking up key things I think you're saying, offering it back to you, and asking a question about it. And what unfolds is amazing,
Mm.
Yeah.
And I think so often, like, people go look for, like, oh, what's the power question? What are the great questions? And I think just showing up, like you said, with how being present and being curious, the
Mhm.
question will show itself so often, right?
Yeah, right. And I know that that's a path of mastery. That takes time to just trust that I coach well enough to be totally present, to have a conversation, just to be in conversation, that I'm not thinking. And
Mm.
because I'm trying to remember a question, then I'm coaching from memory and not presence. And then I disconnect from you. That
Mhm.
I need to maintain this connection with you throughout the conversation and trust I know enough. And to go back to my coach training when I knew nothing about coaching, and my first class, he said, "Oh, just go love them and see what happens." and and I remember, the testimonials from them when I didn't know what I was doing, but it came back, wow, that I had this safe space to talk with somebody who really wanted to listen to me,
Mhm.
and just to help me think. That was enough. And then I got
Mhm.
better with my skills. And yes, we have to learn how to coach and think about it at the beginning because we're shifting from advising to coaching. But
Mhm.
as soon as you get these skills, like, you know what they are, you've been practicing them, then when you're with the client, let them go. You will
Yeah.
remember what to do. I just want to know how you see this. What do you want instead? What's getting in the way? And what will you do? That's all I have to remember.
Mhm.
And then other than that, I'm just here with you. I'm here for
Mhm.
you. Tell me what's on your mind. Wow, that sounds interesting. Tell me more about that. Well, what
Mhm.
does it look like that you would like it to be that's not happening now? You
Mhm.
know, that's all I have to remember. You know,
Yeah.
yeah,
I was had a conversation with a coach that I work with. He's an elite coach, and he had to have a hard conversation
yeah,
with an athlete, and it was very simply, well, what would a good potential result, or what do you hope to get out of this conversation?
yeah,
Like, what,
yeah.
and identify that's like, okay, all right, so share that, and
Mhm,
sharing why you want to have the conversation, and then you know ask, a question around just even what their thought is around their
mhm.
observation. And then he's
Yeah.
like, well, then what? His question, well, then what other good questions should I write down? I'm like, how
Oh.
about you just listen, and be really curious, and the next question will
Yeah.
come to you.
Well, and this is why over the years I've uh, really understood and used more the power of reflection. That's why,
Mm,
the subtitle of "Coach the Person, Not the Problem" is, a user's, how to use reflective inquiry. And so
mhm,
many times people think coaching is asking questions. No, it's not. And people get tired of you just asking questions. And it's not really connected. So when you heard me say so when you said this, that uh, you just don't think that you're good enough yet. Tell me what good enough is. What is
mm,
enough for you? So I use reflection first. And so that's why I don't need to remember questions because I'm keying into the key things they're saying, the descriptive words, the repeated phrases, and saying,
mhm,
what is that to you? How does that relate to what you want? That's a powerful question because
Mhm.
you're relating it to the reflection. It makes them think. As long as it makes them think, it's powerful. So it's not about what somebody asked. That's, oh, I'm going to ask that question, because it's usually out of context and doesn't mean anything to the person. Like, and how are you going to hold yourself accountable? They don't know what accountable means.
Yeah.
you know, what could get in the way? What could you do? Is there anything that could help you achieve this goal? That's what you ask,
Yeah.
but only at the end. Otherwise, stay present, listen for those key things, reflect it back, and then the question is automatic that you will
Mm,
ask. Yeah.
mm.
And then it's a conversation and it flows that way. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I just appreciate that so much. It is so helpful, so helpful. And I know people love to get great questions to ask,
Mm.
and you slipped some in there, which was great. But still, at the end of the day, there's we've had on Dr. Michael Gervais on the podcast before, and he's one of the top performance coaches in sports, and he just talks about just holding up a mirror, and just you're holding up a mirror
Yes.
for your athletes or for your coaches that you're working with. So yeah, this has been a really, really fascinating and really, really beneficial conversation. I appreciate you sharing all your experience and just your kind of your heart for coaching with us today.
No. Well, thank you for asking. I really appreciate it. And I love what you said, that, you know, the coaching we do is seeping into more and more into the sports coaching. Because, when I started coaching in 95, it was always, when I said I'm a coach, it was always, what sport do you coach? you know, you know, and so then we had to differentiate it. Now I think it's so great what you said, that it's coming into the sports coaching conversations, the coaching approach, which makes the
Mm.
difference. So thank you for the work you do. I'm really, really appreciative of that.
All right, that's it for today's episode. Check out Dr. Marcia's book, Coach the Person, Not the Problem. Great book, and her website, covisioning.com, to learn more. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please share it and then subscribe to the newsletter to get the notes to this and every episode of the podcast.